Back in the 90s, I thought I'd found fate. I was in college, making plans to move across the country. He, Jake, had just graduated, moving to the same distant coast for grad school, just 90 minutes from my new home. We clicked instantly. He was a brilliant animal sciences PhD student, surrounded by exotic creatures, and I was completely smitten. It felt like destiny. Then came the betrayal. The casual cruelty. The lies. He told me I was gaining weight, that I was no longer attractive to him. A few months later, he dumped me, claiming I didn't know enough about science. The real reason? He was sleeping with his 19-year-old undergrad student. A student he was teaching. And the cruel irony? This student was nearly double my size, making his fat-shaming comments an even more pathetic and transparent attempt to push me away. He thought he could get away with it. He thought I was just a naive college girl. He had no idea he had just poked a sleeping dragon. And what I did next, well, it wasn't just revenge. It was a complete, calculated, righteous demolition of his entire academic career and reputation. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, and then risen from the ashes to deliver the most satisfying payback imaginable, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for a story that proves karma sometimes just needs a little, well, scientific nudge. It was the mid-90s. Life felt full of possibility. I was in college, and my friends and I were planning a big move, a 3,000-mile leap to the opposite side of the country. Around the same time, I met Jake through mutual friends. He was a little older, already graduated, and planning his move to the same distant coast, just a 90-minute drive from where I was headed. It felt uncanny. Like the universe was orchestrating something truly special. Jake was charming, intelligent, and passionate about his work. He was an animal sciences PhD student, and his life revolved around fascinating creatures. I loved spending weekends at his shared house, a place that always buzzed with the quiet hum of exotic animals he was breeding and selling. We had simple, joyful dates, tacos, long conversations, just being together. I quickly became close with his younger brother and two sisters. They were all fantastic people, and I genuinely felt like I'd found a second family. Through Jake, I even befriended his advisor's wife, Mary. She worked in university administration, a warm, lovely woman with whom I'd often have lunch when I visited. I met other students in his program, making friends easily, sometimes even faster than Jake did. Everything felt perfect. We were young, figuring things out, and deeply in love. For almost 2 years, this blissful bubble remained intact. I believed we were building something real, something that could last. And then, one ordinary day, the illusion shattered with a casual, devastating remark. It was late, a quiet weekend night at his house. We were lying in bed, in that comfortable state of undress that only comes with intimacy and trust. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast shadows across the room. And then, out of nowhere, he spoke words that instantly curdled my stomach. "I'm concerned you've been gaining weight," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real concern. "It's making it harder for me to be attracted to you." It wasn't about my health. It was about him. About his perceived attraction. My stomach clenched. I sat up abruptly, the sudden movement creating a ripple in the sheets. I had gained maybe 10 pounds in 2 years. I was still a US size 6 to 8. I hadn't changed clothes sizes. This was pure, unadulterated garbage. "Well," I shot back, my voice remarkably calm despite the anger radiating through me, "then maybe you should make sure there's better food for me to eat than crackers and cheese when I come up on weekends." I wasn't going to fight him. This was his problem, not mine. I decided to mirror his detached, analytical tone. "So, what's your solution to this?" He stared at me blankly, clearly taken aback by my lack of emotional meltdown. "Well, I guess you should try to lose weight." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced a shrug. Nah, I'm not going to do that. So, what are you going to do about it? He stumbled. I guess nothing. I just wanted to let you know how I feel. Cool, I said, my voice dripping with icy politeness. Thank you. I got dressed. Quietly. Efficiently. I went to sleep, my mind racing, the betrayal a bitter taste in my mouth. The next morning, I drove home, a knot of resentment tightening in my chest. The relationship continued for another 3 months, a fragile, hollow shell of what it once was. Then came the call. He wanted to break up. The reason? And I quote, "You don't know enough about science." He claimed he couldn't have a proper conversation with me without having to dumb down scientific names for animals. My jaw dropped. It was the most pathetic, transparent excuse I had ever heard. That's bullshit, I retorted, a tremor in my voice. What's the real reason? He insisted it was the real reason. I hung up, furious and utterly bewildered. A month later, he showed up at my apartment to return some of my belongings. I wasn't going to let him off the hook that easily. I cornered him, my voice rising. Tell me the real reason, Jake. He finally broke. He admitted he was seeing one of his undergrad students, a 19-year-old named Meg. He was 26. Her teacher. The air left my lungs. My roommate, overhearing the confession, stepped forward, her voice a low growl. Get out. Now. Or I'll throw you off this second-floor balcony. Jake stumbled out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of my shattered relationship. The rage turned to a stunned, almost hysterical laughter. It hit me. The weight comments. The lack of scientific knowledge excuse. It was all a pathetic, cowardly attempt to make me break up with him because he was too spineless to admit he was cheating. And then, a truly delicious detail clicked into place. I'd met Meg a few times. At one barbecue at his house, she'd spilled something on her pants. Jake had asked if I could lend her some sweats. I couldn't. I was a size 8. She was a size 18. Nothing wrong with that, at all, but it exposed the sheer hypocrisy and cowardice of his fat shaming. He liked a big gal himself. What a hypocrite. He tried to weaponize my body image against me, all while secretly pursuing someone who completely contradicted his own shallow standards. The thought of his fumbling, late-night attempt to insult me into leaving, 95 miles from home, after we'd just had sex, was so absurd it made me laugh through my tears. The laughter subsided, replaced by a simmering, focused rage. He thought he could lie, cheat, and disrespect me. He was about to learn that my lack of scientific knowledge didn't mean I was stupid. It just meant I communicated in different ways. And I was about to use every single one of them. It was the early 2000s, so I fired off an email. Not to Jake, but to his roommates. George and the other guy had always been kind to me. I explained the breakup, how much I appreciated their friendship. Their response was immediate and validating. They admitted they knew about Meg and had actually threatened Jake, tell me the truth, or they would. That's why he had called me with the pathetic science excuse. George, bless his heart, offered to gather my remaining things from the house. He also suggested I come up for the weekend. We could go out, drink, and actually have some fun, all the things Jake was too cheap to do. I agreed. Oh, I absolutely agreed. I arrived at Jake's house while he was out. George let me in. This wasn't just about picking up my stuff. This was reconnaissance. I knew Jake had a complex array of animals, some for breeding, some for study. And I knew, from my time there, that he had a few irregularities. I specifically remembered an endangered species, a non-releasable animal he'd taken in from a rescue. He was supposed to submit paperwork and a $25 fee, but he'd refused, citing some nonsense about not wanting the government in his business. So, with my trusty camera, I started taking photos. Pictures of the endangered animal, the conditions of his breeding animals, and crucially, a shot of an animal that was completely illegal to possess in that state. It was in a tank, right next to a window, clearly visible from the outside. Every click of the camera felt like a tiny victory. That night, George and I hit the town. We drank, we laughed, we flirted. We made sure to tell the story of Jake's betrayal to anyone who knew him or his peers. The program wasn't huge. Word would spread fast that their TA, Jake, had cheated on his girlfriend and was now dating his student. George and the other roommate were already submitting formal complaints to the university. They were sick of Jake's entitled arrogance, and they were more than happy to help. We stumbled back to Jake's house around midnight. I was in a short dress, slightly tipsy, and George was practically carrying me. Jake and Meg were still up, watching TV. The look on Jake's face when he saw us was worth 1,000 pictures. I spent the night in George's room. George, a true gentleman, made sure to parade past Jake and Meg in his boxers a few times. We giggled and moaned loudly, just enough for them to hear. The next morning, I emerged from George's room, my dress a little rumpled, my hair messy. I savored a donut, slowly, deliberately. Jake, looking utterly defeated, blurted out, "You don't have to act like a whore in front of me." George just beamed at me, then planted a kiss on my head. Meg looked mortified, avoiding my gaze. I met Jake's eyes. "Have fun with my leftovers," I said, and walked out. I wanted to believe that was enough. The loud, hook up, the juvenile insults. But I knew it wasn't. This was just the appetizer. The next day, I had my photos developed. I called the State Fish and Wildlife Office. I calmly, politely, reported the potential overcrowding, the unfiled paperwork for the endangered species, and, of course, the completely illegal animal Jake was harboring. I told them everything. And the universe, it seemed, was already aligning. A few weeks later, George called me, practically giddy. State Fish and Wildlife officials were at the house, confiscating animals. Meg, bless her clueless heart, was there and told the officials that all the animals belonged to Jake and were all legal. That cleared George and the other roommate of any wrongdoing. The officials, having been tipped off by my detailed description, immediately knew to look for the animal in the back window. Since George was on the lease, he let them in. They returned later with a warrant to take all the animals and thoroughly search Jake's room. Meg, unable to reach Jake, had to drive to the university to find him. Remember, no cell phones back then. It was a glorious day. They only left him with some guppies. But I wasn't done. Oh no. PhD students rely heavily on grant money, especially in animal studies. Jake had just secured an EPA grant right before he broke up with me. So, I made another call. To the EPA. I asked how to report that a federal grant recipient was under investigation for illegally harboring endangered animals. Long story short, he lost his EPA grant. He had to make restitution for almost $30,000 he'd already spent. He would never get another federal grant again. While he avoided jail time for the state charges, because all the animals were, thankfully, in good health, he lost all his breeding animals, worth thousands. In the end, he owed a $15,000 fine, and those 2 illegal animals went to a nearby nature center. For years, I'd stop by to visit them, a quiet testament to justice. And the university? My friend Mary, Jake's advisor's wife, was furious when I told her about Meg and showed her the email evidence. She immediately ensured a full investigation. The university revoked his scholarship and fired him from his teaching position. He somehow avoided expulsion, but his academic career, as he knew it, was effectively over. His hubris had been his undoing. He hadn't even waited the 4 weeks until Meg was out of his class to go public with their relationship, a move that would have kept him in the clear by university rules. I later emailed Jake's sisters, explaining why I'd been out of contact. He'd told his family I broke up with him because of the distance. I forwarded them the emails where he'd explicitly mentioned Meg and my supposed academic inferiority. His family, whom I adored, finally saw him for what he was. Jake, humbled and disgraced, managed to convince his father to pay for one more year, enough to scrape by with a master's degree instead of his PhD. And me? I went on to get my own master's degree. My specialty: helping scientists and doctors communicate their work to lay people. You know, us, dummies, who can't remember all the scientific names. It happened by accident, not design, but I loved it. I worked with everyone from small-town doctors to pharmaceutical companies, traveling the world, learning incredible things. Jake and Meg got married, had 2 kids. She dropped out of sciences and became an accountant. Jake went back to breeding animals. I kept in touch with his siblings. Once, at a bridal shower for one of his sisters, Jake loudly complained that his siblings were still friends with me and hadn't embraced Meg. His sister, without missing a beat, laughed and said, "I don't make it a habit to be friends with homewreckers." That's how Jake's parents found out the full, ugly truth about their relationship, 10 years after our breakup. Jake never found out I was behind reporting him to the state. I hadn't lied about a single thing, merely provided facts and evidence. And I had the satisfaction of knowing I had helped direct knowledge to the right places. Fast forward about 20 years. Life had been good. My career was thriving. I was a guest lecturer at a major university, speaking to a room of 250 undergrad and grad students about the very thing Jake said I didn't know enough about: science communication. After the lecture, mingling with students, I heard a voice. "Hey, OP, long time no see." My blood ran cold. I didn't change my expression. Not one muscle twitched. My instinct was to play dumb. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice carefully modulated. "Help me out, have we met at another workshop or lecture?" He looked incredulous. "It's me, Jake." I widened my eyes, a fake gasp escaping my lips. "Oh my goodness, Jake. I guess I blocked you out." I offered a quick, "Lovely to see you," and moved away, just as he tried to reach out for a hug. The satisfaction of him seeing me, a successful guest lecturer in a science department, while he was just another face in the audience, was immense. I was ready to leave it there. A quiet, personal victory. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't quite finished. Later that evening, the department chair and faculty who had invited me took me out to dinner. One of them casually asked, "So, you know Jake?" I was vague, simply confirming I knew him from over 2 decades ago. Then she delivered the bombshell. He had been there for an interview for a teaching position. He'd spent a few days observing, and they were likely going to hire him. I couldn't help it. A scoff escaped my lips. When they all looked at me, surprised, I apologized. "I'm sorry, I'm just shocked he's teaching after what happened at University X." Their faces went blank. "What happened?" "He was sleeping with a 19-year-old student when he was 26, I said, my voice measured. He had to leave the program without a PhD because he couldn't afford to stay after losing his scholarship. The 3 faculty members exchanged a look. A look that said, "Oh, we have a problem." They quickly changed the subject, but the seed was planted. A few days later, my old friend Mary, Jake's advisor's wife, now retired but still connected, called me. A friend at the university had told her someone had called doing a background check on Jake. They pulled his file. It contained everything: the firing, the lower degree, the original complaint letters from 20 years ago about his conduct. And as a bonus, a copy of his arrest record for the illegal animals. Apparently, his father had paid a good lawyer to get the record expunged, so it wouldn't show up on a standard background check. But once the university started digging, it was all there. "I don't think he's going to get that job," Mary chuckled. And just like that, after 2 decades, karma delivered its final, perfect blow. I returned to my life, content. The universe truly does come through sometimes, especially if you give it a little nudge. The best revenge isn't about doing anything wrong yourself. It's about helping direct knowledge to the right places. It's about letting the truth, unvarnished and undeniable, do its work. To any young women and men out there, as I happily shimmy into my now size 10 pants, if someone who is supposed to love you complains about your weight or your looks, that is their problem to fix mentally, not yours. That's a red flag. Check what they're doing behind your back, or simply move on. Remember, it is their flaw, not yours. If Jake hadn't been such a coward, if he'd just ended things maturely, I might never have discovered his wickedness. And he might have lived a very different life. But his own actions set the stage for his downfall. And sometimes, that's the most satisfying revenge of all. If this story gave you chills, if it made you want to stand up and cheer, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments, what's the most satisfying, long-game revenge you've ever witnessed, or even pulled off yourself? And of course, subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.